Good evening, welcome back. It is Wednesday, April 19th, 2023, and we have a slew of birthdays to get through, and a few of these are pretty strong birthdays. I'm not going to have any events for you today. I kind of scoured over the list really quickly, and from my count, there's only like 5 Cup Series races that have been run on this date, the most recent in 2015. I think a lot of that has to do with this date falls deep into Easter season, and traditionally NASCAR and a lot of other motorsports have not run on Easter in the past. They've just recently started that practice back up. So there was a huge gap in years between races run on this date, and the few that have been run, there was just nothing of major significance to really talk about. So last one was at Bristol in 2015. I believe, if I read right, it was won by Matt Kenseth. So let's go ahead and jump into the birthdays. We're going to bookend this pretty strong. So we're going to start off with a driver. Well, we'll go ahead and mention a cardless one born on this date in 1975, Townsend Bell, former IndyCar racer, works, I believe, with NBC now in the broadcast team. So I didn't have any of his, at least I couldn't find any. But we're going to start off with a driver born on this date in 1962, two-time Indy 500 winner, Mr. Al Unser Jr. Now, I don't have these in any particular order, but he did run IndyCar for quite some time. There he is with his son. He did have one foray into NASCAR in 1993, running the Daytona 500. That was the car he was supposed to have run, but he crashed that one in the qualifying race and ended up driving Ken Schrader's backup. So it had the correct lettering, but it just had it was all white car with green trim, just like Schrader's Kodiak car was that year. There's another card of him back in the early 90s. He always had a sharp-looking Indy car there with Gallus, with the Valvoline colors. At least I always thought so. A couple more. I didn't go through and look for the French and the American versions, but these two cards I really wanted to show you about because we've talked about these before, the ANS set. This is the set from the, this is the card from the ANS factory set, and this is the one that was available locally. As you can see, it's got the same picture, virtually. I mean, the cards are the same size. They just changed the borders just slightly, because you can see you have a free sausage and egg biscuit that you could get at Hardee's. Now, the factory, that's what the back of the factory one looks like. This is what the local one looked like. And as you see, win with Hardee's and WTHR, which is our NBC affiliate in the area. So this had the text there underneath the stats from 1985, I believe it was. And then this just had all the copyright information. So kind of interesting that there's two different cards there with the same photo, but slightly, they're just ever so slightly different. And the one that from Hardee's, I've had that since I was a child, so chances are that's probably sausage biscuit grease on the back of it. So anyway, we will move forward. Born on this date in 1978, but tragically took his own life in 2009, Mr. Kevin Grubb. Always thought he had potential. He drove, obviously, the Timberwolf car here for Bruco for a few years. You can see that the card companies really did their best to not promote the advertising, but there was one that did sneak through. I think, was it the first one? Yeah, you can kind of see that the Timberwolf branding is there. He did go to the Irving, Washington Motorsports team there with Dr. Pepper. Didn't have much luck there. I know he drove a Toys R Us car briefly. And again, he always would finish in that 6th to 15th. They had their own team for a little while, him and his brother Wayne, and they both had some strong runs. That's how Kevin got noticed, but ultimately, after a couple of suspensions for substance violations and so forth, he had a lot of issues with NASCAR, I guess, but I've only read bits and pieces. I don't know the whole story. But I think Kevin, if he could have got a good ride, he wouldn't have been a superstar, but I think he would have been somebody that could have been, a driver that won 2 or 3 Busch races at that time. I don't think he was ever going to move up to Cup. But I think he could have been a solid career Busch Series driver. So up next, born on this date in 1943, Mr. Richard Yates. And have something interesting to tell you about Mr. Richard Yates here. Yes, he is related to car owner Robert Yates, but in a unique way, he is actually Robert's twin brother. So Robert also has a birthday today. And I got these arranged chronologically. As you can see, he was crew chief for Davey here. And for a while, Robert Yates was working for Dycard in the late 70s, early 80s, and was an engine builder, and several cars on the field had Robert Yates engines in them. So one of the things that they always said is his cars would handle down the straightaway, meaning they had a lot of horsepower. Of course, in 96, Robert started a second car. There it is right there, Dale Jarrett's Quality Care car. He never expanded beyond 2 cars, except I think it was 2003 at Talladega when they put Jason Jarrett in a third car. And that was the chain that broke the link in the Casey Kane Ford stranglehold. And there's one of the last cards I got of Robert near the end of his ownership career. But if you go back and, Ford had, Casey Kane in a very, very, very tight contract. Evernham wanted to hire Kane to drive for him in 2004. Ford said no. Well, Dodge started researching Casey's contract. When Yates put Jason Jarrett in a cup car at Talladega, it voided Casey Kane's Ford contract because it said in his contract that Casey would be eligible for the next competitive Ford ride. Apparently, the lawyers got involved, and Casey was able to unfortunately for Yates and Ford, find a breach of contract. And, the rest is history. Casey drove for Evernham in 2004 and moving forward. And I kind of think that that's when the Yates empire, if you will, kind of started getting cracks in the foundation and started having problems. And, there's always maybe they could have picked up another driver like Casey, a young up-and-coming driver that could have. They had Stephen Light, they had a couple others, and nothing really, really panned out for them, unfortunately. And there's a really good interview on the Scene Vault podcast with Slugger Labby that had some insights with Robert Yates Racing as well. Just listen to part 2 this week because it drops. So he's got some interesting insights from from Robert. Nothing bad, but it's just part of the inner workings of these teams. So our final birthday, which I find an ironic birthday, born on this date in 1942, 1 year before Robert Yates, Jack Roush. So, how funny is that the Roush Yates namesakes were born on the same day, 1 year apart? So, of course, Jack started in Cup in 88. He had Trans Am ownership prior to and was very successful in road racing series. 88 to 91 was a single car team, bumped up to 2 cars in 92, and expanded to as many as 5 cars as one time before NASCAR put a 4-car cap on the series. And Roush, even though all 5 teams were fully funded, he had to close one down. And I can't remember who the folks he sold the 2016 to, but it was called Latitude 43 Racing. Boris Said did drive that car for a few races. David Stremme and some others also drove that car. But, of course, Roush is another owner. I didn't mention that Robert Yates sadly passed away a few years ago. I believe it was 2017. But Jack Roush has escaped death at least twice in airplanes. He's had 2 plane crashes. So, that's very lucky with him. But, of course, Jack, always very technical. And a lot of folks on different podcasts that I've heard have said that he's never really liked change. He's never liked people questioning him. So that's what's made it difficult for Roush Racing as it is to move forward and keep up. I think with Brad Keselowski coming in as a partial owner and having a little bit more influence than what, say, a driver would. Newman had an engineering background, and he should have been able to have spoke the same language as Roush, but obviously not having ownership stake makes a big difference. So anyway, I think RFK is on the way up. I would have loved to seen what would have happened if Robert Yates Racing, or Yates Racing later when his son Doug bought it. You know, if they could have merged not only their engine program but their racing program, how much stronger that unification would be today. So anyway, happy birthday to all those folks. I know I've rambled on for 10 minutes and we've talked about a lot of nothing, but just giving you some insights and stuff that I've read and stuff that I've listened to on podcasts and my own thoughts, because that's what we like to do here. Try to make sure that we celebrate as many racing figures as we can on this channel. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Not sure what I got planned for tomorrow yet, but we will get something figured out for you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.